Welcome to the Strong Life Coach podcast, where we showcase stories of inspiring professionals while highlighting the universal principles of success. Today, I'm joined in the podcast studio by attorney Allie Keegan. Allie, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to talk to you.
All right. Well, I'm looking forward to asking you questions and learning the stories behind the stories. I know we get a chance to see one glimpse of you from being online and connecting with you over Instagram, but I'm looking forward to hearing the details behind the details. Let me tell everybody a little bit about you so they know a little bit about your story. Allie Keegan is a criminal defense attorney and partner at the law office of David P. Shapiro, APLC. She graduated from Villanova University before earning her law degree from the University of San Diego School of Law with a concentration in criminal litigation. She has practiced criminal defense in both state and federal courts, handling cases from murder to misdemeanors from their inception through trial. Allie has also served as a legal analyst for national and local television and radio networks and is involved in several legal and political organizations throughout the San Diego community. Allie, I'll just start by asking you, what inspired you to become an attorney?
It's a great question, and I get it a lot, and I've always wished I had a better answer to this. But the truth is, if you know me on a personal level at this point, you know that I can be a little hard-headed, and I've got my opinions. I'm not afraid to share them, and that is not exactly something I needed to grow into. I've been like that for about as long as I can remember. So I was a brat, quite frankly, as a kid. I was a really difficult teenager. Thank heavens for my parents for just putting up with me for so long. But it was kind of a running joke, right? Like, you're so sassy, you might as well use that mouth, be a lawyer, make a career out of it. So it was kind of a running joke. And then when I was in college, I worked for a couple law firms. I interned at a prosecutor's office in Brooklyn. And that's when I really kind of got the itch to keep doing it. So it piqued my interest early on, and there was no looking back after that. It worked out that I always said I wanted to be a lawyer, and I didn't have to call my own bluff, because I would have been at square one just trying to think about what I wanted to do. But it worked out.
Nice. No, with your family having observed this maybe the stubborn personality, the sassy personality that you described, what was some of their response when they found out that you actually did it? You know, sometimes milestones might be the milestone of getting into law school, or the milestone of graduating law school, or the milestone of passing the bar, or the milestone of even being a partner at the firm. What has been the response of your family with these different milestones that you've crossed?
Yeah, there is no understating the privilege that I had with my family and their support along the way. I think my mom still worries sometimes, probably in the career path I chose with criminal defense. I do what I can to put her mind at ease. And I think my dad is just glad that I'm someone else's problem, that I'm arguing with someone else for a living now. But they've been so supportive. I'm the only attorney in my family. So I think they were wondering what happened to me and who hurt me and why I chose this life, but they've been awesome. So my extended family, my sister is my rock, and she's always been super supportive and kind of been the mental health outlet when it becomes a lot. But I couldn't have done it without my family, because they're the building blocks upon which I built this career.
I love that. I love hearing that, and you elevating them and lifting them up. It's always special when somebody's, I think, talked about in a positive, uplifting light when they're not even in the room. But when it comes to like the family that we've had that, that really cultivated who we are and how we operated and shaped us into who we are, for you to be able to have these uplifting words to say about how they supported you and helped you to get to where you are, it's always endearing, I think, to hear something like that.
I got lucky, that's for sure.
Now, you mentioned your mom worrying. Let me dig into that a little bit. So is it because as a criminal defense, so you're defending criminals and then potential maybe people involved, take issue with you because you're whatever. In their perception, is it that like you're on the side of protecting the bad guy and that's what she's afraid of? Or is there something else that kind of causes some of that maybe worry or anxiety for her?
Probably all of the above. I don't represent criminals. I represent alleged criminals. Thank you very much. But she's definitely sort of in that camp, right? It's if you say, hey, someone's being investigated for murder and I'm going to go hang out with them for the afternoon, it's my mother, right? She's going to be nervous. I have, and I stand by this, I have the best, funniest, coolest clients of anyone I know. So I don't care
Mm,
what they're accused of. They're good and fun people. So
mm,
I'm never really worried about my safety in any sense like that. But she definitely worries on a personal level because of that. And then
mm-hmm.
because she's my mother and she knows the way I'm wired, she's definitely worried. I think about general burnout, biting off more than I can chew. And she's a good reminder for self-care, whether I want to hear it or not. The woman's going to tell me, I love you, mom. But it's so I think it's kind of that twofold concern. The profession itself is one thing, and then the burnout and the mental health is another big part of it.
Yes, I love that, and thank you for the correction. Alleged criminals, and no, that makes
I'll
sense.
share my opinion, right? So
So so then, do you think? So you being in it, you're years into the game at this point, and you of course you're in the rooms with these people, and that's not just. I mean, it's not just in a controlled environments like in an office building in like a in a section of the jail, but it's also in the free world as well. Like you're having these meetings as well out there, or is it mainly all in the facility connected with the jail or the holding area?
in custody clients, I mean, I can't meet them for coffee. So they would catch another case if they somehow managed to make themselves available for that. So
Mm-hmm.
those are obviously in controlled environments. A lot of times it'll be, there's just deputies passing by randomly if you're doing a jail visit or something like that. And then, of course, if my client's out of custody, we can meet at the office. We can do virtual calls if we need to. And then even when people's cases are over, and they're former clients, I'll get lunch with them. We'll hang out. A lot of clients
Mm.
become friends after a while, right? So it just depends, but there's no rules or rhyme or reason. And the people aren't, if you're going to hurt anyone, it's not really in your best interest to come for your criminal defense attorney.
Right,
Um,
right.
not to brag, but I'm kind of emotional like that. So it's not a big deal. We don't really think twice about where we meet. I won't meet new people for the first time alone in the office like after hours because that's
Mm.
just a general safety thing. It has nothing to do with what the people are accused of. I wouldn't do that with anyone.
Mm.
Like alone in a building after hours, but that's pretty much it. So it we can tailor it to what we need with the client in the case.
Got it. Okay. Now that makes sense. Because I was wondering, there's naturally different environments provide different threats. You explained it even well as far as being mindful of not being alone and building after hours. But no, that makes sense. I was wondering if one environment made mom feel safer or more at ease or calm, which I mean, I don't know. You tell me your opinion. If you're ranking them as far as the safer ones to the less safe, would you say in holding like a jail visit is on the safer side of the potential options, or would you even have a ranking system like that?
I honestly probably wouldn't because it's just not an issue. The only
Yeah.
time I've ever had an issue with a client safety wise in or out of custody, they were having a mental um, episode of some sort. And that was in jail. It was in the holding tanks outside of a courtroom. And the client was having some issues. It was just me and the client in there. And I knocked on the window, and a deputy walked over and let me out. And we had the client work through their stuff. It's the only time I've ever had an issue. And that was when I was an intern at the public defender's office
Mm.
many moons ago. So it's just not a thing. I think that's part of the rhetoric that surrounds criminal defense, where everyone's a rapist and a murderer, and we lose the nuance when we're talking about it socially, or when you're talking about it in a political sense at the Thanksgiving table. But
Hmm.
at the end of the day, a lot of our clients, even if they're guilty on the elements of the offense. They're just really good people that made a dumb mistake, right? And that's not something
Hmm.
that's going to recur. They have no interest in doing anything to us or anyone else moving forward. So it's just, it's really not in my day to day
Right.
concerns as far as what about my clients. They're just cool people. Um, that I see in weird contexts and I meet in weird ways because it's related to their case.
Hmm. That makes sense. And even when for a few years I was doing some volunteer work with the closest state prison to here in San Antonio, Texas, and it was out in the small little city, Hondo, Texas, and very similar to what you're describing is like there's the perception of it. Yeah, you walk through seven really thick doors and you're frisked or checked or whatever. Or you're walking through the metal detector and all of these things. But really, when I would explain it to people when I was doing the volunteer work and doing some speaking and training in there, I was like, I feel so safe in here. I'd bring my grandma. Like it's that, it's like that. Like it's very very safe and people in certain settings. I imagine you can relate with the settings of incentives to be well behaved and to treat you well. It's in their best interest to treat you well and to make sure you're as good and safe as possible because you're advocating for them.
I'm so glad you did that work too, because I think in general, when we're talking about this community and this population of incarcerated people or people that are justice impacted, the easiest way to actually rehumanize them for yourself is to get to know them, right? And it's very easy to go to those extreme ideas and examples in your head when you're not seeing or hearing from those people because they're physically locked away. Um, so when people take the time to volunteer and go into the facilities and talk to these humans like humans, it's twofold, right? We're giving these people a interaction that they need so that when they get out, they can adjust more easily and it's better for their mental health in the interim, but it's also a really good experience for the people doing that volunteer work. So that makes me really happy that you've done that because I usually tell people if you can't look at your client and understand what got them here and what happened, and you can't understand why they did what they did, you probably just haven't spent enough time with them yet.
Yes. Yes.
Usually you're going to get it after a while once you get to know them better. And the only way to build that muscle is to do it by
Hmm.
making yourself maybe uncomfortable if you're inclined to be afraid of these people, but put
Hmm.
yourself out there and volunteering in that capacity is such a good way to go about that. So thank you for that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and it's like we all know the phrases or maybe the trope when people talk about when I go to serve and help other people. It's like they're showing me that they're way better people than I am. You said it well. They made mistakes and they got caught for their stuff, and I made my mistakes. When I was much younger, and I didn't get caught for whatever things I did. But I think so many times I was walking away going, like, hey, I have 7 new stories of inspiration for people that have that are people that have so many privileges in the free world, and then people who are limited so much by what they can and cannot do on a daily basis, but then they're finding ways to be grateful and they're finding ways to serve each other, finding ways to build each other up. And anyway, so I was very, very humbling. I think a good amount of tears shared there doing the work and also on the outside. And then even connecting with people on the outside is also really, really special too.
It warms my heart to hear someone else have that perspective, and we need more of it. So,
Yes, no, it's probably the favorite part of volunteering that I've ever been involved with. So, yes, yes, yes. And it encourages me to know that you're so encouraged just to hear about it a little bit. But,
and you've got a platform, right? And you're using it, and that's
mm-hmm.
half the battle is just getting the word out there. And then anyone else, if you want me to bully you into volunteering or doing anything, hit me up. I'm not shy about it.
Now, tell me, what do you enjoy most about being an attorney?
Every day's a puzzle. And being a criminal defense attorney in particular. I'm not what we call a transactional attorney, where you're on the phone and you're in the office most of the day. As a trial attorney, I do a lot of shuffling around. So we've got a bunch of different courthouses in San Diego. I could be in one different one every day of the week. And then I've got jail visits with different facilities that I'm bopping around to. And then I'm in the office meeting with clients and answering emails and getting coffee with other professionals, because that's obviously something you have to do if you want to have a sustained business model where you're finding these people so that you can help them. So it's every day is an adventure, and it keeps me occupied. I always say I'm absolutely never bored in this job. It'll keep you on your toes, and you never know what the day is going to bring you. I could walk into the office, say, man, I am tired. I am so ready for this office day to just sit on my stupid computer and answer my stupid emails. And
Yeah.
then a client that's been under investigation for a year just got arrested, and everything's moving very quick, and we've got to get to jail, and they're going to have a court date. So it's there's always something, and it's always going to keep me engaged. And that was something I always needed, I think, in a profession, so that I would keep working at it, because it makes you always want to be better.
Mhm.
There's no complacency in a job like this.
Hmm. It sounds like, I mean, movies and shows don't hold a candle to all of your real life adventure and excitement that you get. It's like, I mean, I don't know. Do they hold value at this point, because you have so much maybe vigor and excitement and twists and turns and plot twists in your real life, that maybe the plot twists on the movies and shows don't do it justice.
It's hard to say, because I don't watch a ton of them anymore. The last thing I want to do when I get home from court and then jail is go home and watch a murder documentary, or watch How to Get Away with Murder or Law and Order or something like that. At that point, like, just put Vanderpump Rules on and give me a snack and leave me alone. But I've watched a couple of them. I remember in law school watching How to Get Away with Murder and being absolutely infuriated at
Hmm.
just the artistic license some of those shows take. But there's a reason that they do well, right? It's really at its core, it's cool work that we get to do. Um, and that's not lost on me, because I get to do something that is, people like hearing about it at happy hour, right? It's just, oh, what do you do? I'm a criminal defense attorney. And it's like, oh shit. And then you see the whole conversation completely veer off, and you're like, oh, here we go. How do you sleep at night? What's the worst case you've had? Do you know where the dead bodies are? It's just, it never ends. And it's a privilege to do it. So I don't, the TV shows are probably fun and popular for a reason, and it's the
Hmm.
same exact reason I like the job itself.
Yes, yes. Then do you, because of some people's unique response to you and what you do you sometimes hold it back for a minute so that they could perceive you as whatever, a normal person, and then you wait till later to let them know? Or what's your social protocol with letting people know what you do? Are you wait until later, or bring it up from the get go, be a little bit more vague, or how do you do that in social situations?
In social situations, I mean, I'm not just walking around volunteering what I do,
Right.
because that would be weird in general, right? If you were like, hey, I'm Derek, I have a podcast, people would be like, where'd you come from, right? Like, what's going on?
Right.
But when people ask me, I think I usually just stick with, I'm an attorney. They usually ask what, and then I just tell them, and then the faucet opens, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I don't care if you're having a conversation with me about anything. I'm not going to keep it together for long enough where you're going to think I'm cool or normal. It's just, it's going to show up in one way or another anyways. So I don't
Mm-hmm.
mind the conversation. And because a lot of people have good and fair questions about how, like, do you worry about that? Do you worry about getting someone off that's going to go do it again? And they're great questions, and it gives you a chance to have that dialogue with an audience that's willing to receive it. that's sincerely asking. And even if it's a little bit of an insult to me and my life's work, it's a good opportunity to have that conversation in a really productive way, unless it's like a drunk person at a bar, right? Then
Right, right.
see you later and you're on your way. But in general, I really don't mind talking about it, even if they don't fully get it,
Mhm.
because I would say a lot of my friends probably didn't when I first started. And I love seeing now when other people don't get it. When other people are like, oh, you do criminal defense. Why do you defend criminals? Why do you defend those people? Lock them up, throw away the key. And my friends will get pissed off and be like, it's not like that. She does really good work. And seeing the converts with time. So my people have kind of become the best advocates for that. My friends, my
Mm.
family, because they see the work we put into it. So I don't mind the conversation. And at this point, I've got so many people around me that know and love me, um, that understand why I care so much. And they can kind of carry the torch for me even when I'm tired. And that's nice. It's very,
Mm.
very refreshing.
Yes, yes, yes. Now, how did you land in criminal defense? Like, has it always been criminal defense in the very, very beginning, and you never wavered, and it was always this direction and blinders on, or were there ever any other segments of the law that you maybe flirted with and considered before you really went forward into with criminal defense?
That's a great question. It was always criminal law generally. I don't know that I was cemented in criminal defense at first. I know I always said I had that preference that I wanted to be a defense attorney. If I, even as a teenager, was watching sports, and I'm still this way, all else being equal, if I don't care about either team playing, but I'm just watching a game and I'm getting invested in it, I'm looking at who's the underdog,
Yes.
thinking, okay, who I want the Cinderella story, and I don't care what the context is. And I'm just kind of wired that way. So I definitely had a preference for defense early on, but my first real criminal experience was at the Brooklyn DA's office as a college intern. So mind you, I'm stapling paper and I'm making photocopies, right? I'm doing
Mm.
nothing substantive or interesting, but I did have a lot of time to just read police reports and read the case files and look at it. And I say a lot, criminal defense is the professional version of like looking in everyone's medicine cabinets, which
Mm.
I will also do if I come to your house. Just, you got to know. I'm going to go through your shit. I can't help it. I won't judge you. I'm just so curious. And this job is a lot like that. So I got hooked really early on, even from the prosecution end, because I thought the stories and the cases were really fascinating. And then in law school, I did both. I interned as a law clerk for the public defender's office, representing indigent people again as a clerk. So I could appear in court, but with a supervisor. And I clerked at the U.S. Attorney's Office, which was federal prosecution. That was rough because in San Diego, when we're so close to the border, that is a lot of criminalizing people just existing on this side of the border, saying, hey, we came over to the US and we didn't do it lawfully, so you're deported, and then you come back and then you're detained again. That's rough, right? I did not particularly enjoy that aspect of it in this city. And I remember one time in law school, I had an interview for a clerkship with, I think it was Homeland Security. And you're in your stupid little suit, right? I feel all professional and I feel so great. And I'm like, I'm going to nail this. And I walk into the interview, and the question was, I mean, would you be comfortable separating families? And I remember thinking, like, no, are you? What's wrong with you? Come on.
Yeah.
Um, like, how do you justify that? And why are we villainizing the defense all the time? And it's everyone has a job, right? So I learned early defense was my preference, but I also, to this day, I could do prosecution. I don't want to at this moment in my life, but I could do it because we all have a role to play. And
Yeah.
I teach criminal law in a paralegal program, and I always tell my students to, if you decide you want to do criminal defense, hit me up. I would love to talk to you about it. I think it's the greatest job in the world. But if you are
Hmm.
smart and you give a shit and you're good and you want to do prosecution, I really hope you go do that too, because the whole
Hmm.
system needs good people on both sides. So I wouldn't lose sleep either if I were doing prosecution, in the sense that I know I'd probably be a real liberal prosecutor, right? Like
Hmm.
I've got my criminal justice reform ideas, and those aren't going away, and I'm not letting them go. But I can understand everyone has a job in the system. It's just a matter of how much good can you do with the role that you're given. Right
Hmm.
now, the most good I think I can do is kind of in the trenches, representing my clients throughout their cases. And I wouldn't want to do prosecution, but I think I could do it. I think I'd be a great prosecutor if I ever wanted to do it.
Hmm.
I would have a very unique perspective, given the fact that I
Yeah.
know these people that are being accused, and I know that
Hmm.
there's always more to the story.
Yes. So you tease the idea of criminal justice reform, and you have your ideas. Um, again, can you give us a preview? You don't. I mean, can you share a couple of ideas or suggestions or or content there?
Yeah. Um, we could do this forever. Uh, Statistically, if you are a person of color, you are statistically more likely to be contacted, stopped, detained, arrested, charged, convicted, and sentenced more harshly than your white counterparts. That is just, you can look at any study you want. It's a systemic racism issue, but we have kind of this revolving door we talk about with the criminal justice system, where we have people of color that we are charging more harshly and sentencing more harshly. And then we're making these people that have priors and we're sending them back out, and we're bringing them back into the system because they have priors. And it becomes that never ending cycle. It
Hmm.
happens
Yeah.
to all sorts of people. It just happens disproportionately more to people of color. And there is no magic pill we can take to fix that, right? Because it becomes an issue in our bail system. We talk about cash bail, and if you are lower income or a person of color, you're less likely to have an affordable bail amount set for you. And
Hmm.
even if there is, maybe you can't afford it, and then you're in custody while your case is pending. It's harder for you to assist your attorney in your own defense. And it's more likely that you're going to take a deal just to get out of custody sooner, right? I would do it too.
Hmm.
I have clients where I will beg them, like, give me a couple more weeks. I can get a better deal for you. And they're like, I
Hmm.
really want to get home to my kids. Like, I can't be in here for another day. I'm going to take it. And that
Hmm.
sucks. So, and it affects people differently. People of color are going to be put in those positions more often. So there's the bail element and how things are charged. The entire system. If anyone, y'all out there, watch 13th on Netflix. I offer my students extra credit for watching it. It's entirely about how we as a country abolished slavery, with the exception of as punishment for a crime, essentially.
Hmm.
So it was premised on, when we're talking about the Jim Crow South and we're outlawing slavery generally, there was incentive for racist institutions to continue to incarcerate people of color,
Hmm.
because that was the only way our Constitution had really made that loophole by which to treat
Hmm.
those people. So it's a problem. And I'm
Yeah.
a nightmare if you go to happy hour with me and give me a glass of wine and ask me about it, because I will not shut up. Um, but it's the best way, it hurts to think about and it gives you anxiety. But when you're doing the job, at least you know you're doing what you can to make a difference,
Hmm.
even if it's one case at a time. But whew, criminal justice reform, ma'am.
Hmm.
We've got to we've got to vote for good people. You need to elect good people that get it, maybe that have lived experience. Having
Hmm.
people stripping rights away from people with felonies. Um, and not letting them hold office and vote and things like that. That's part of the issue too, because when we have people that have lived experience going through this system that can provide input, I think we'd all be better off.
I love hearing your passion about it. I think that's so then does that incentivize you and motivate you to be more invested in the people who come into, have political influence and political power, and like you mentioned the elected officials? Does that give you more drive than maybe an attorney in another space that maybe not in the same way have the same incentive to really want good officials to be in there?
I think so. And this could apply to any field, right? You could work in healthcare and you're going to care passionately about healthcare policy or education. So it's applicable to a bunch of different people in a bunch of different spaces. But in criminal justice, it really matters. People don't vote for judges enough. Like when there's a judicial election, people don't vote down ballot. So if you're voting in the primary or the general election, you might vote for the president and the
Right.
senator, but by the time we're getting down to the judges, people are like, "Meh, whatever. I don't know. I don't feel like doing the research, or who's the incumbent? I'll just vote for them."
Mm.
And that's a huge problem because the judges are the people on a literal case by case basis are making decisions with people's lives, hundreds of people a day. They are determining their fates and how, the trajectory of the rest of their lives. And people aren't voting on the people that make those decisions. So that's tough. There's always the concern that if we're too vocal about a political position for the district attorney, so the state prosecutor in San Diego, the city attorney, the misdemeanor state prosecutor in San Diego. When you're too vocal about that, you don't want it to backfire and then adversely affect your clients, because at the end of the day, our duty is always to our clients. Um,
Hmm.
but I'm annoying, right? So I tend to take a position and I do make it known. I support politicians and people that I think are running good campaigns with good platforms. Sometimes it's choosing the lesser of two evils. I'm not going to
Mm.
lie.
Mm-hmm.
You're not always going to love everyone that you have to choose from, but you pick the best person you can with the information you have, and you try to influence it in a way that is going to make my clients' lives better, my life better, and people that you trust their judgment. But judges, their one job is to make these decisions
Mm.
for us.
Right.
Um, I can talk till I'm blue in the face, and so can a prosecutor, but it's a judge's call at the end of the
Mm.
day.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times those people are there without enough input from the public on the ballot. So I wish people would vote down ballot more in that sense, because they
Mm-hmm.
hold so much more power than we realize.
Mm-hmm.
You're perfectly aware of it when you're standing in front of them and you have a case with them. But the normal voters that are like, it doesn't matter to me because I don't commit crimes, right? Um,
Right. 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 Right.
Call me after a couple glasses of wine when you go to dinner and you get pulled over on your way home. None of us are above being wrongfully accused or something like that.
Sure.
But I do wish people were a little more invested in the political aspect, just because it
Mm-hmm.
does affect us.
Yes. What would you recommend as to how to go about researching judges in people's local area? It's something I'm sold. It makes sense. Again, I've never voted. Period. Again, I'm being completely transparent. I never voted for anything, but I could
We'll work
see
on
the
that.
yeah, I could see the validity in what you're saying as far as the local judges, and then I'm asking myself, how would I go about learning information? Because I guess incumbent just means the present judge that's already in the position. Is that what that means?
Right, right.
And
Whoever's
then
already.
right, and then so naturally, I probably wouldn't want to be, oh, the information I'm getting about the incumbent is the one who's challenging them. Okay, I learned about the incumbent from the challenger, and that information might be biased. But what's your recommendation of how to go about researching judges in local areas?
That's an awesome question because judges can be tricky because they want to be like, I'm impartial. I'll be a great judge. So they don't want to necessarily show their cards when they're running. I would highly recommend when you have judicial candidates that you're vetting to determine who you want to vote for, which you will be voting for next time, Derek. Um,
I mean,
that you
I'll have them on the podcast. I'll put them in the studio and ask questions. I just need to figure out who they are and how to do it.
I will find them for you. I'll send you a list. But if you just Google them, you look at their websites, they're going to have endorsements from other politicians, likely, or other
Mm,
judges. And that's going to give you a very good idea of where their head tends to be at, right? If you see a bunch of what you consider open minded or just that aligns with your views, we could have totally different political views and I wouldn't love that you vote for that, but you that's your right to,
right,
right?
sure.
So if you find other politicians that are more transparent, more out there that you know and might have more name recognition and you see their name attached to this candidate, that's going to be very helpful for you. And ask your local annoying lawyer because the lawyer that's appearing in front of them day in and day out, or it's a prosecutor that's up to be on the bench and that's running for office and they don't have a track record yet as a judge, but we know what kind of prosecutor they are and
Mhm.
whether they listen and if they hear you out and they're reasonable. I have prosecutors that have run for office that I have voted for that have told me to straight up, well, not straight up, fuck off, but have very nicely, they've listened to everything I've had to say about a client and they've said, Allie, I hear you. I've considered it and no. And it
Mm,
is so annoying. But when they listen, what can you do, right? Compared to people that will belittle your client or dehumanize them, isn't interested in hearing the full picture. So the attorneys that have worked with these people behind the scenes, when those people are not on a soapbox in a campaign, um, their day to day is going to be very telling too. So asking any kind of local lawyer you know, and we'll see it go through on listservs in San Diego, right? You know, these two people are running. Has anyone worked with either of them? What feedback do you have? So that's a good way to know. I would say Google it and find their endorsements or
yes.
ask an attorney that's been in court with them.
Nice. I love it. I really love that. I'm totally going to use that. Now, do you think naturally I go, doing the podcast stuff is a lot of fun for me. It's so beneficial for, everybody involved. But with questions like that, do you think the optics of it will be better? Those questions are better offline, off record, because it's like, oh, like criminal defense attorney talks bad about the judge, then it's like if for somehow, some way that got back to them, that's probably not a good look. But would you recommend that those are some conversations maybe are better off record, or what's your perspective on that?
Always. I mean, everything you put in writing, you should expect everyone and their mother to read. It is 2024, people, right? Like, people are screenshotting stuff, they're sending it around. So, what you'll often see is there are two candidates. Does anyone have any experience with it? And someone will reply, call me, right? They get it. They
Mm,
know. So, I definitely, in law and in life, don't put anything in writing that you are not ready to stand by and defend if someone else sees it and reads it because we do that duty to our clients. I mean, that permeates all aspects of our life, right? I
right.
have no business representing my clients and doing my best work for them at the office if I'm going to go and do something in my personal life that is completely opposite of what I think would be in their best interest. It's you do have to be sort of consistent with it. So putting yourself out there and being like, I hate this candidate. I'm going to jump out my window if they're elected, yada, yada, yada. And then that person wins. And then you're going to show up for an arraignment in front of them next week, picking your nose like, hi, sorry about that. If that got out. So, of course, you've got to be mindful of it. That's definitely an off record um,
Mm-hmm.
conversation, I would say, when it's going to be that full throated of a criticism.
Mm, yes, I can see that. And I suppose then any potential challengers for the role would have to be very tactical about what to bring up because, as you said, they could be challenging, they could not get it, and then they are still kind of going through them on a regular basis as far as affecting their day-to-day life and their clients and all of that. Is that accurate?
It's exactly it. The issue you'll see people when they do that run, and then if they lose, it's interesting. Sometimes they just go back to their day job. If they're a prosecutor and or a public defender, their job is still there for them, right? And it's kind of just a matter of people may or may not know that you ran, and there's no harm, no foul if they did it respectfully, which most
Yes.
people do. San Diego is a small legal community, which is fantastic because you can't suck, otherwise everyone will know. So it keeps everyone accountable. But it's you either go back to your day job or some people just dip out and they move on to other things if they've gone for a really, really hard fought race and then they've lost and maybe they've said some things that they can't take back, then they just move on to the thing, right? It's life
Mm,
doesn't end. They just might have to pivot because they might have burned a couple
sure.
bridges on the way. So it's just a matter of at the end of the day, can you still, with a straight face, go represent your clients uh,
Hmm.
to at the highest ability
Sure.
and have you act in a way that's still consistent with that outside of court?
Sure. And then would you say, is being a prosecutor that pretty much, is that the career path? Like the next thing is judge, is that like a, whatever, 90% of the time the judge is going to be a prosecutor, do they ever come from the defense side?
They can come from both. There are a lot of prosecutors on the bench, though there are plenty of defense attorneys that also are. So
Mm,
that's why, we love to see good prosecutors and good defense attorneys on both sides take the bench.
wow.
There are times where I might celebrate a prosecutor that I really know and like and respect that I know cares about people at their core. When they get a robe, we celebrate with them, right? It's one of those things
Hmm.
where it's less the side you're coming from and more, I think, your philosophy of the job and who you are at the core. So I can be just as pleased with someone from either side becoming a judge. And that's the beauty of it. And I can be equally disappointed for a crappy defense attorney as I would be a crappy prosecutor taking the bench. So it's kind of equal across the board, but we do see a lot of prosecutors. And some of the best judges we have are former prosecutors. It's
Mm,
just, it's who you are as a person underneath the
sure.
job itself.
Is there a majority? Is there, I don't know, 70-30 or 80-20 that of a mix that you've observed over your years and seeing like the judges? Is that 80-20 or is there a majority that you've seen?
I don't know specifically. I feel like it's more prosecutor heavy, but that's kind
Mm,
of just anecdotally from being in
sure.
court. I wouldn't know if there's a specific number. It just feels like um, we're swearing in a lot of prosecutors, and there's a bunch of, we've got to acknowledge at some point that there's historically the perception that a lot of judges are like old white men, right? And that's
Mm,
definitely somewhat true. We're still dealing with that. The bench, and when I say the bench, I just mean all of the elected judges or appointed judges generally. The bench has gotten much more diverse in recent years, which is really important. Um, but we do kind of still have some of that like old white man mentality. It's getting so much better. And look, there are some old white men judges that I adore, right? Because they're really good at their
mm-hmm.
jobs and they're good people.
Yes.
So you can't really indict them for just their um, their demographics the way you can for anyone else.
Sure.
But it does feel like we've gotten more equitable as far as gender, race, and both experience with prosecutor versus defense over the years.
Mm-hmm. In a place like San Diego, like how many judges would be in the area, and is it based on the population density, or is it based on the number of attorneys, or how is that all figured out?
So there's a number of seats. We call them judicial seats in each courthouse. And we have 5 or 6 courthouses. I would say 5 in juvenile court, and we have different seats for all of them. So
Mm-hmm.
our criminal courthouse downtown, that's got a ton of different departments. It's got over 20 floors and 4 courtrooms per floor. We've got a different judge in every single one of them. And then we have the other courthouses on top of that. So we're talking about a lot of people, and a lot of people that do this until they retire, right? So they can start fairly young.
Mm.
They do it, and that's just what they do until the end of their career when they retire. And that's when they retire, they will have a vacancy for a seat that can either be filled by appointment or will be through an election where people are going to run to replace that judge. So
Mm.
people tend to know, who's going to be retiring soon, whose seats will be available. And you can always get a sense of, it's a small town. So oftentimes we know sort of who's in the running for those seats, and we can start talking behind the scenes, off the record, about who would be the best fit for a role like that early on.
Hmm. And then the difference. I know I'm asking you a ton of technical questions, but I'm really
Love it.
loving the conversation. So,
Love
so then you mentioned the appointment versus the election. Is an election happen when the judge just says, "Hey, I don't have anybody to appoint, so y'all figure it out," or what's the difference between the two?
Oh, it's so complicated. If there is going to be an appointment, there's a special commission in California, and this is all specific to California, right? But there's a commission that will vet candidates for judges. So if the governor is going to appoint someone to fill that seat, there's this whole secret commission, which I think is really cool, where they will, and this is why you can't be a dick in a small town, and I love it for this. They will send out like evaluations to everyone you've ever worked with. So if you want to be vetted for an appointment, a judicial appointment on the bench, I would have to say, I am Allie Keegan, and I have worked with all of these prosecutors. These are all of the cases I've had, every trial I've ever had. This is all the case numbers, the clients, the outcomes, the judges that I worked with, any other defense attorneys, and all the prosecutors. And they will send those evaluations to all of those people, and it is anonymous. So if you have been a
Mm.
human being for 20 years and you think you're going to be nice to people and bring like cookies to negotiations before you get your appointment, I've had colleagues that have gone ham on those evaluations, good and bad, right? When we see someone we think is really phenomenal, we will be so thorough and kind of sing their praises, whether they're a prosecutor or a defense attorney. But oh man, if you are just a jerk and you've been a jerk for a really long time, and suddenly you think you're just going to be appointed to the bench, the I love the defense community in San Diego for this. They will rip you apart anonymously into this secret commission, and then you just die on the vine. So everything you do really early on in your career, in every case you negotiate, if you have any aspiration like that, you have to act right. You have no other choice because the rest of us are going to get to weigh in when you're up for something. And oh, it's my favorite thing. Just people don't hold back, right? So that's how the appointments work. The governor will appoint someone, but this JNE commission will
Hmm.
evaluate you first, and it's the best.
Hmm. I love seeing your passion about it. Do you think that I, I would imagine that it incentivizes people to, especially ambitious people, to purposefully network pretty much throughout their career, especially outside of work events, and really be connected with the legal community and really get in there. Um, but do you think it's even possible for somebody to really be like only interacting with the legal community like during work hours and be able to even climb the ladder and elevate into these different positions?
That's such a good question. I think being well connected is obviously going to be is going to be very favorable for you if you're a good person, right? So being involved like that is always going to improve your odds and set you up for success like that. Whether you have judicial aspirations or you just want to be a really well respected attorney in the community that people send business to, and that people, even if they don't have a client for you, they're going to say, okay, I need an attorney in LA or I need an attorney in New York. I don't know of one, so maybe Allie will, because Allie, people know Allie. Allie talks to people. It's always going to be good for your career to be well connected. It's just got to be authentic. It's got to come from a meaningful place. Because if you're just showing up at like brown bag lunches for CLE credits, which is our continuing legal
Right,
education,
right.
do, and you're popping in once a year to be like, look at me, I love women or I love people of color. Transparent, right? Like we know it, especially when it's a year before you're going to make a judicial run. And I'm like, what's up, man? Like, never seen you here before, but lovely. Glad you showed up. Better late than never, I guess. So
Mhm.
it can be transparent if it's not done the right way. But a lot of times people just find their community in the legal community. I've had some of my best friends I've met through an organization called Lawyers Club of San Diego, which is specifically to advance the status of women in law and society. And I showed up
Mm.
because I was practically dragged in by the hair of a friend of mine who was a public defender. She was like, Allie, you're getting involved. I don't care whether you want to or not. And then I got there and I kind of found my tribe, right? So when you
Mm.
have connections like that, and they're real connections and real people that you care for as much as they care for you, they're going to have your back and they're going to help you succeed no matter what avenue you take. So definitely, if you have judicial aspirations, being involved in the community is important. But if you want to really have roots in the legal community, you need to do that too. My whole thing is I'm always worried that if I want to influence something, will I have a voice? Will I be
Mm.
able to input if there's something that really matters to me? And I
Right,
think the
right.
only way to guarantee that you can affect something that you really care about is to have some level of status, not even in like a superficial way, but just have people know and trust you so that when you speak, people listen.
Right.
And finding real, true connections is a great way for people to listen when you have something to say.
Mm. That is one. I love being in the classroom right now. I'm appreciating the time with Professor Ali Keegan right
You know?
here. This is good. I wanted to ask you something else about the social piece. What was it? You said in the community. Oh well, it's an interesting thing because I think about sometimes with I know we won't even be able to get to the work-life balance question, but I was thinking about it.
There is none. That's the answer. There's no work life balance.
But I mean, I was thinking about like the families of again, the family members of ambitious people. The profession in and of itself is so demanding. Just again, just on the profession side, and then again, I'm imagining that person, and then they're like, okay, and then now it's after hour stuff, and now it's hey, we're inviting this person in the legal community over for dinner, and then the family is going like, what? You already work a ridiculous number of hours, and the social hours are also spent with these people, like. Anyway, it's I could see how there's yeah, somebody has to really. There's a commitment that's next level for their career, getting that work done, that 9 to 5 or whatever it is, 9 to 8 or whatever it is, and then to put in the work on the social side as well. It makes me feel for those people who are maybe more introverted and get their energy from being alone. It sounds like maybe they get some of that from doing the work, and maybe they're energized at work, and then they're drained afterward. But any thoughts about that?
I mean, I'm an introvert. So if I can do it, anyone can because my social anxiety is just, I will convince myself that everyone hates me all the time. And if that's true, just don't tell me because we're working on that in therapy. But I have that mental hang up, and I'm not one of those people where being around other people does not fuel me, it drains me.
Yeah.
And part of that is just knowing who you are and how you work. Once I kind of learned that formula, it became much easier. I will not go to an extra dinner with a work colleague or for networking or something on this particular week if I see that I have two or three other engagements outside of normal work hours. I can't physically do it. I will fall apart. My body will physically shut down
Hmm.
and I'll have a panic attack. So I just know that that dinner, I can still have it, but it's got to be the week after or the week after that. And we're talking about what, half the population of introverts, right? So people tend to get that. And I've stopped pretending that I'm busy or I can't. I'm just like, I will fall apart.
Mm.
I'm not a good time when I'm like hungry and tired and over it, right? So let's just wait a couple weeks and do it then. And people tend to respect that boundary and really appreciate it.
Yeah.
So that was a game changer for me. You can still do all of the same things, just not necessarily on the same timeline.
Hmm.
And going nonstop all of the time is not going to be the recipe for success for everyone. If you have that stamina, good on you.
Hmm.
Teach me your ways, but I need a nap sometimes. And my
Hmm.
Sundays, I need to sit and I need to stare at a wall. I'm a big puzzle person. I do jigsaw puzzles a lot, and that's how I like
Mm.
process my feelings and I sit in silence. And without that, I can't function because I need to recharge after the social things. So I think it's just knowing how you're wired and adjusting your lifestyle to that so you can still do what you need to do professionally to do it the right way and to be successful while
Hmm.
also honoring yourself at your core and knowing what you are and are not going to be fueled by.
Yes, it's a great lesson. It's a great lesson for people to practice, to be introspective, and to have the self awareness to realize what's best for them, and what's best for somebody else will almost definitely not be best for the next person over. So you got to customize your own life to make sure you don't fall apart, as you mentioned. Um, I want to ask one more question, and I know we were largely off script for the duration of the podcast, but I'm
It's
fine
the only way
sitting
I
here.
know how. I'm fine with it.
The last question I had is: do you have any ambitions for being a judge?
Oh my God, no. I am 32 years old. I'm really enjoying the trenches. It is exhausting, but at this point, you can only do so many things at once, right? I would never be able to have to focus on something like that, and I think do the planning that you need to do for something like that and still feel like I can give 100% to my clients and anyone else that needs me. So that
Mm.
is nowhere on my radar. You never say never, right? You can always change your mind, but at this point, like I curse a lot. I say a lot of things to a lot of people that have already disqualified me from being a judge. I would not have that any other way. I could never keep it together for long enough unless I get very old and very tired and I chill out a lot. But otherwise, I like kind of the role that I have and I like the way that I'm doing it. And I'm going to do that for as long as I physically can.
Mm. Respect, my friend. Respect. Well, Professor Ali Keegan, I want to say thank you for hopping on the podcast today, and this really enlightening us and giving us a lot of information. Is there anything we can do to support you? Do you want us to go to your Instagram or the website or the firm's social media? Where would you want them to go to support you?
Yeah, for sure. So you can find the firm. It's Law Office of David Shapiro. We do state and federal criminal defense in San Diego County. So you can find our website there. You mentioned that we met on Instagram, and oh, if you only know me on Instagram, I am so sorry because I'm annoying on there too. But it's at Ali Keegan Law. I'm pretty sure is my handle there, or LinkedIn. But if you want to do criminal defense, you want to get involved in the community, there's always going to be a place to you. So reach out to me. If I don't know someone that can help you, we can try to get you in the right place or push you in the right direction, because it's a good job. And I want as many people that want an opportunity in it to be involved, to have that.
I love it. Well, thank you for gracing us with your presence and gracing us with all of the information. I think we all walk out of this episode, I think more aware, and my commitment to learn who the judges are here in San Antonio, and to vote down the line over there. I'm committed. I'm in there. But thank you.
We're voters now.
Thank you for spending time with me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, everybody. Thank you for tuning into this episode. You are our precious listeners. If you want to support the podcast, one thing you can do is go over to the Apple Podcast app, give us the 5-star review. Let us know how much you loved Allie and put that in the comment. And we'll see everybody on the next episode. Bye-bye, everybody.